Right. I got up this morning, or I was sitting in the car and I was looking out. It was dark and I was tired. And I'm like, do I really want to do this? It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. And I just sat in the car thinking, no, I can just go back. I can go back home and go back to sleep. But then I was looking at the mountains and how the sun was coming up, and I kind of knew that it's gonna be difficult, but I knew I wanted to do it. So, I just I thought, okay, I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna do this. And I'll probably go slow, and I'll probably be out of breath a couple times, but I'll do it. I'll just do it. So I'm just gonna grab my pack, gather up my camera, get my gear, and start moving. And just getting out of the car and feeling the elevation difference from where I'm from. I'm from Utah, and I'm 2,000 feet higher than I normally am. And there's a slight incline, and I walk like 100 feet, and I'm out of breath already. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm not gonna do this. This is ridiculous. But I just decide to, I'm just gonna do it. So I, get my pack, grab my gear, and I just start hiking up. And then I come out of the parking lot and up to the actual trailhead. I'm like, this is crap. I'm like, no way. This is too steep. But I'm gonna do it. And then I decide, I thought, okay, I better drink my pickle juice, because I know I'm gonna get cramps, because I always get cramps when I go up something high that steep. So I grabbed my bag and looked in my bag to see if I had my pickle juice, and didn't have my pickle juice. So I had to run back down to the car and get my pickle juice, and that's, the worst thing to drink in the morning is bitter, salty pickle juice, like glugging the juice out of the bottom of a pickle jar, and it's like disgusting. But I know it's going to be beneficial for my hike, because it's going to get hot, and it's going to be, I know from past experience that if I don't have my salts or my potassium, that I'm going to get a cramp in my calves. So disgusting as it is, I chug it down, and I just start hiking. But as I'm hiking, when I'm out in nature, I think about things in the past and think about things that I've experienced, and like going to the end is my goal, and getting through hard things is my goal. It's like I want to get to the summit, and I know it's going to be hard to get to the summit, but I know I want to do it. In the past, going through high school, it was always difficult for me with learning. I always struggled with English, and I always struggled with math. I mean, with all the subjects I struggled. Learning, I couldn't figure out why it was hard for me. I read the content, I read the material, but I just couldn't remember the stuff. And I knew in high school that I wanted to go to college, but I knew that I needed good grades to go to college. And so I struggled with academics. I know I loved my art class. Art class was fun. That was easy. But when it came to biology and physics and algebra and stuff like that, it just took me extra long to get through that material. And then I graduated from high school, and it was college. And so, I looked up to my brothers, and my younger brother and my older sister, and they were much more experienced than me. And they had no problem getting through high school, and they had no problems with studying. And they, the family tradition was to go to Miami of Oxford, Ohio. And that was the college that the majority of my family went to. But I didn't have the grades to get there, and so I ended up going to Ohio State because it was easier to get in. At the time, the cheap way to go. Go to Ohio State because everybody can get in. Doesn't matter with the grades. And so I went to Ohio State, and so like my college career is in 2 stages. I went directly out of high school right into college, and it was really hard, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so for a year and a half I kind of floundered, and I didn't know what direction, and I was kind of wasting money. I was building up debt, and I didn't know what to do, and so I decided to stop. I didn't go to college. I just quit, and at that time I was struggling with direction. Didn't know what to do. Didn't know where to go. Do I work at a fast food restaurant, or do I do something that can maybe motivate me to get back into college? And so I grew up Catholic with my family, and then I was baptized, and I joined the Latter-day Saint Church. And from that point, I served a 2-year mission in Mexico, and I had to learn Spanish. And I'm like, here we go again. It's like crap. I had a hard time learning languages in high school, and here I am learning a language to go to a different country. And for 2 months, I learned the Spanish language at the Missionary Training Center in Utah. And then after two months, they just dropped you into the country and said, you're on your own, figure it out. And maybe my Spanish could have been better if I studied harder, but I studied really hard on the language, and I studied the conjugations and how to talk to people. But I knew deep down there was still that struggle I had in high school that was still there. It's like, why can't I learn the simplest language out there, which is Spanish? People say Spanish is super easy to learn, but I still had a hard time learning Spanish. And I was in Mexico for 2 years, and I started dreaming in Spanish, so I said, okay, cool, I must be fluent in Spanish, but I still struggled with remembering the proper conjugation, like how to speak in present or future or past tense. And I probably sounded really strange to the local that my Spanish was broken, even though I lived in the country for 2 years. But I came back from Mexico, and I decided to go back to college. And when I went back, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe architecture was what I wanted, because I really enjoyed that type of science. But I got into architecture, but then it got super hard because I had to learn the things about engineering and the physics of metal and physics of wood and stone. And that higher level of math, I just couldn't grasp the concepts, and I was frustrated. And I remember vividly, I was walking across campus, and I walked into one of these buildings. It was for the art department, and I saw the senior exhibit for graphic design, and I knew that's what I want to do. And but I also knew that it was hard to get into. It was very competitive. There would be 500 people that were applying to get in, and only 90 people were accepted. But I knew in my heart that that's what I needed to do. And I applied, and I didn't get in the first try. And my counselor said, well, you're just going to have to find something else to do. And I said, no, I don't. I'm going to try again. And so she said, well, if you're going to try again, then you have to take your basic education requirements and then try again in the spring. Because they accept students in the spring, and they start the program in the fall. And so I tried a whole nother year. I did all the prerequisites to get there, and then I reapplied, and I got accepted the second time. And I think that was a breakthrough for me, because I found something that I really had a passion for, and I was really focused on. but I still knew that I had the struggles of learning concepts and understanding concepts. And so I decided to search out people to help me, because I knew if I had people who could help me with my education, then I could get through the hard stuff. And so what, like for example, the professor would say, hey, we're going to have an exam over a certain in statistics, which I hated stats, which is funny because now I like it. But at the time, I'm like, I had to take an exam for stats, and I knew that I had to prepare at least a week or week and a half in advance to be ready for the exam. So the moment he said there's going to be an exam, I went to the library every day, and found a quiet spot. I had a spot I went to throughout my whole college career, and I would listen to classical music, which is like, it would blend out all the sound of all the people, and then I would be able to read, and I would just read, reread, and then I would write. It's like in the process of writing and reading, I was able to memorize the material that I needed to get through college. And I passed with a C, which is okay with me. I passed it. And I graduated, I graduated from college. I did it. But I still struggled, I still struggled with learning and concepts. I got, towards the end of my college career, I got married, and we put off having kids for like the first year because we were newly married, and we wanted to experience a dual income and traveling and seeing things around the country, and we did that, and we had kayaks. We were big into sports and activities, and then we decided to have, we're going to start a family. We're going to start and have a family and have kids. And the woman that I married the first time, her dad was a general practitioner. He was a doctor. And we were trying to have kids, and nothing was happening. And he said, just give it a year, relax, it'll come, it'll happen. And it didn't happen. And so, thanks to my father-in-law at the time, he's like, I think you should go get tested. Both of you get tested. And I think my father-in-law, Paul, noticed something about me that he kind of had an inkling that maybe there was something more than just infertility. And so he sent me to a specialist in Indianapolis, and I got tested for infertility from the specialist. And it came back that I was diagnosed with 47 XXY. I was diagnosed with Klinefelters. And having Paul with me, he was able to explain a little bit more medically in detail what 47 XXY was about. And then I was diagnosed when I was 27, and it was 1990, what year was it? 1999. So the internet wasn't very big at the time. And so all the material that I had to go by was medical journals from my father-in-law. And it was depressing. It was like, okay, well, this makes sense why it was hard for me to learn, because the executive function in the front of the brain is not well developed, and trying to learn new content, new material, it goes in, but it doesn't stick. And so like going through high school, going through college, on my mission, that whole learning totally made sense. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I was able to figure out workaround to be able to learn, for me, what worked for me. Then it explained the infertility, why, it's like you can't have kids. You'll never have kids unless you go the expensive route and have a biopsy and you do all the in vitro stuff, which we didn't have money for, so we didn't do that. And then there's a Mike before Klinefelters and a Mike after Klinefelters. And the Mike before was this happy-go-lucky guy. He was just, I'm just going to get through it no matter what, but I'm going to be happy about it. And then after Klinefelters, the diagnosis, then that's when Mike decided to kind of go into this like depression mode where it's like, why me? I'm not like my brothers. I'm not like my, I'm not. I had this thought in my head. It's like, I'm not a man. Even though I am a man, I'm not a man because I don't have that aggression. I don't have that, I can't have kids kind of mentality, sort of like that victim. Here I am, this victim. This was given me. This is what I have to live through. And so, I tried to, spin it as positive, like I'm getting through this, it was devastating for me and my wife. So there's a term that we coined from my mother-in-law that I became the brick, meaning I became the person who took on the sadness and the hardship for my wife. Not, she couldn't have kids. So I became that brick of a person who took on those responsibilities of somebody else, and I ignored my struggles and my pain because I had to get her through her pain of not having kids. And so me being the brick, I put aside, I was the happy-go-lucky, but in the back of my mind, it's like, I'm never going to have kids. I'm never going to have my Bulgarian background is not going to be into my kids. They're not going to have the big nose or the ears or the bushy eyebrows or the blue eyes from my mom. That just, my line stopped, and that was devastating. It's like, you have these dreams that your kids are going to look like your wife and you, and that combination, and that it stopped with me, so it was kind of heartbreaking to think, okay, I'm not going to pass on my genes to my kids. Whatever kids I do have, they're not going to look like me. And so here we go again, it's more struggles. Like, why do I have to have all these struggles in my life? Why do I have to have all these heartbreak and hardship? So I played the victim for a good 5 or 6 years. I worked. I kept my jobs. But in the back of my mind, it was just that depression. And then, we eventually adopted through an agency, and beautiful son. I love my son. I mean, he's got mannerisms that look like me, but he doesn't look like me. He's got blue eyes and blonde hair. But he speaks like me and he acts like me. And then I have another son, Max, who doesn't look like me at all. He's Hispanic American. He's got brown hair, black eyes, and brown skin. But it was, I think, once my son came, that thought of, I'm not going to be able to, have biological kids, that kind of changed a little bit. But I don't think it was until after my first marriage failed. We weren't compatible. Things just weren't right. Felt sort of, I think having that relationship with her, it wasn't conducive to being positive. There was always negative. She always found fault in me, and it was always my fault in things that went wrong in the relationship. And so it was going through therapy and trying to figure out how to save this marriage. By learning how to save the marriage ended, but it saved me, because I realized that the Klinefelters wasn't defining who I was. I'm who I am because I get to choose who I am. So I could either choose who I am by saying, okay, I'm going to play the victim, and any person I meet, I'm going to play the victim, and they're going to have pity on me because I'm playing the victim. Or I can say, okay, yeah, I was handed this deal with this extra chromosome. There are all these positives. You're highly creative, you're intuitive, you're empathetic, you're a good listener. Let me look at the positives instead of the negatives. Let me dwell on the positives and stop dwelling on the negatives. Let me move up instead of going down. And one of the phrases from my mission was, it was in Spanish, actitud determine altitude, which means attitude determines altitude. So if I'm going to have this attitude of I can get through, look at all the stuff that I got through up until now. I got through college, I got through high school, I had kids. So if I look at all these positives, then that's going to determine my altitude. I'm going to go higher. So from that moment through therapy, I realized that, hey, I've got a lot to offer. I'm a good person, I'm a great guy, and so first marriage was crap, and then I decided to just find out who I am as a person, so that in between, so if I do find somebody for me in a second marriage, then I'll be ready, because I'm no longer the depressed guy, the victim. I'm Mike, the positive. So I just decided, let's find the guy that I used to be before Kleinfilters, that guy who's happy-go-lucky, always energetic, always out for fun and adventure and challenges. And so it was like a rediscovery of me. Like, that's who I am. That's who I want to be. And now I'm, because I found my passion, which was graphic design. My first part of my career was publishing for McGraw-Hill, which is a large textbook publishing company. And then in between there, because I was at McGraw-Hill, the technology was booming, the internet was booming, software development was booming, and that's when I made a flip from a printed traditional graphic designer into more of a technology-driven designer. And I got into what's known as user experience design, where I'm able to use my positive traits, what Kleinfilters gives you, which is empathetic, analytical, where you think through the why, asking why things are the way they are, and a problem-solving person. You give me a challenging problem and I can work it out into a winning solution. And so I thought, hey, I'm going to start moving in that direction. I've been doing UX for the last 15 years, working for large companies, McGraw-Hill, Nationwide Insurance, large banking companies, large healthcare companies, because I have a passion for it and I have a strong desire to learn. It's like when you find something that you have passion for, then your energies go towards those, and you become that person. You become that successful person because you have something that you have a passion for. And now I'm in a company in Utah where they celebrate diversity and they celebrate differences in people, and they accept those differences because they find those strengths in those people who have struggles. I have teammates who struggle with bipolar. I have people who struggle with confidence issues because either they're homeschooled or they come from a broken family. And me, who, as Kleinfelter, is able to share that experience with my teammates and with my company, and they see that I've got these strengths that will benefit the bottom line for them because I'm empathetic. A UX researcher needs to be empathetic because they need to understand what it's like to walk in the shoes of those who are struggling with a piece of software. And I'm able to understand that sort of sixth sense of how they're struggling and how to listen to them and take that knowledge and turn it into a positive design. So now I'm converting from a UX designer into more of a UX researcher, where I can take those research methods and understand who the customer is and understand how they're struggling with our software. And building for the first time, the company upper management is investing money into my department, and I'm at a point where I can help build a UX research company based on all the struggles I've gone through, and here I am.